First to breaking news this morning, the federal government has approved Qatar Airways' bid to take a 25% stake in Virgin Australia. The Treasurer says the deal will strengthen competition in the sector and result in more flights between Doha and Australia.
But there will be enforceable conditions to protect Australian jobs and customer data as well. For more, our political reporter Nicole Hegarty joins us from Parliament House now. Good morning, Nicole. This is breaking this morning. So just what can you tell us about this agreement?
Good morning, James. That's right. So the Treasurer has given the okay for this to go ahead. The proposal here is for Qatar to take a 25% stake in Virgin. The Treasurer saying that this would result in an additional 28 weekly flights between Doha and Australian capitals. So boosting the diversifying the options for international travel here, and also adding to the overall number of international flights. There are, as you say, several enforceable undertakings or conditions that this deal is subject to. Those include Australian representation, continuing on the Virgin board, and also the protection of consumer data or customer data. The Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, says this is in keeping with advice he received from the Foreign Investment Review Board, and that's what led to this decision today.
All right, Nicole, thank you. Now, we are going to go straight over to Catherine, who has a guest for us.
Yes, I do indeed. So we're going to return to one of our top stories today. In case you've missed it, Marty Sheargold and Triple M say they've mutually agreed to part ways after the radio host made a foul-mouthed rant about the Matildas on air. For more, we're joined by 7-time Olympic medalist, 4 of those gold, I should point out, and also the host of the Play on Australia podcast, Libby Trickett, now from Brisbane. Good morning to you, Libby.
Good morning, Catherine. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming on, because I know you're navigating the school run right now. So we so appreciate it, and shout out to your kids' teachers if they're late. It's ABC News Breakfast's fault. Libby, let's talk about yesterday. How did you feel when you heard those comments on Triple M?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think, like a lot of people, particularly a lot of women, my initial reaction was pure rage. It was so incredibly disappointing to hear, as you mentioned, incredibly foul-mouthed commentary around women's sport at prime time on a national show. That was absolutely shocking that is happening in 2025. And, you know, I've recognised that behind the rage, you know, we're not surprised that these sorts of comments continue to happen, but it never surprises me how, like, it always surprises me how disappointed I am when I continue to hear that, especially in this day. And I really felt like there was a cultural shift that happened, particularly around the Matildas. You know, a couple of years ago, the World Cup, their performance there, 11 million people watching these incredible athletes. And you kind of felt like maybe we'd made that cultural shift to really appreciating and celebrating women's sport. And then you hear something so misogynistic as what Marty was talking about on Monday. And it was just, yeah, really disappointing. And my heart just broke for all of the little girls, you know, particularly grade 10 girls who were, you know, named in the segment, who might have been heading to sports training that morning and just would be so heartbroken to hear someone blatantly just saying that they're subpar.
Yeah, that's actually the part that breaks my heart, Libby, because you think back to when we started sport, you know, it was a lot more difficult then. We had to listen to a lot more of that, and I really thought by this stage that wouldn't be the case. And in that way, do you just find it a little bit exhausting, all of it, that we're still talking about it?
Yeah, it's been interesting to sort of have the conversation with a few of my friends, and you know, it kind of ranges from like white hot rage, which is probably what I experienced, to you know, not being shocked and kind of being like, well, yeah, that's just what we expect now these days. And I think for me, it was just the idea that there are, we know that for a fact that of the kids dropping out of sport at the age of 14, 57% of those are girls. So they are overrepresented in the kids dropping out of sport. And those sorts of comments are the things, it creates another obstacle, another barrier for kids continuing to play sport. And we know how important sport is, whether you're going to go to the Olympics or represent Australia in the Matildas. It doesn't matter, you could just be playing community level sport, but those sorts of comments are so harmful to our young people. And it's just, it's so incredibly disappointed. So I feel like the right outcome has happened here. I'm sure there are people who would be like, well, this is an overreaction. Why does it matter? But it matters. Language matters. Talking about young people and our incredible women athletes who are, batting well above their average. We have the women's cricket team and the Gillaroos, and I mean, I'm a little biased, but the Australian women's swimming team, we are doing exceptional things on the world stage, and we want to continue that. And the way that we do that is by celebrating and lifting young women up in sport.
Libby, speaking of the Australian women's swim team, one of your former teammates, Liesl Jones, now yesterday she went on air, even though she works with the same company as Marty, and she took the decision that she just had to speak out. It cannot have been easy. I want to let our audience know that a lot of women who were keen to come on the show weren't permitted in some cases by media managers, by their organisations. They are getting silenced. So we really appreciate you, Libby, coming out and talking about this. And Liesl, how proud are you of your swimming colleagues being a voice today?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm good friends with Liesl still to this day. We're the same vintage, so and we often I still get comments that I'm Liesl and she gets Libby, and so we're quite close in that respect. But no, I'm incredibly proud of her. It would have been an incredibly difficult thing to kind of navigate, thread the needle essentially of your employer and wanting to make a stand. And she spoke really beautifully on her show yesterday. So no, I'm really proud, and I'm so incredibly impressed by Rosie Malone, who was the initial kind of catalyst that kicked off this conversation, and Chloe Dalton from the Female Athlete Project as well, who just did a marvelous job of really bringing this to light, because without these conversations, nothing changes. And that's why, language matters. And it matters that Marty said this on Monday. It matters that his co-hosts just kind of laughed along and didn't call him out on it. And this is why I'm as disappointing as hearing those comments are, and knowing that there are still segments of our population who feel that way. I think what we've seen is this groundswell of support for women in sport, and that gives me hope. I think that we are really on that precipice of really celebrating women in sport.
Libby, thank you so much. When women support women, good things happen. We appreciate your time today.
My pleasure, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Thank you to Libby. Love her podcast. We could do a whole show on a range of issues. We'll get her back on another day, but great to have her here today.
Friend of News Breakfast. Great.
Indeed.
Lovely to have her on. Now, just on this story, Marty Sheargold also stars in Fisk, which is, of course, broadcast on the ABC network. A spokesman for the ABC says Marty Sheargold is not an ABC employee. He adding that the ABC has been a strong and proud supporter of women's sport over a very long period of time. The comments were offensive and they were wrong.
Yeah, so we're also chasing comment from the production company behind Fisk and also from Channel 10, and that broadcasts programs Mr Sheargold also appears on, and we'll bring you any updates when they come in.
Let's get some more news for you now, because private health insurance premiums will rise an average of 3.73% from April after lengthy negotiations between the federal government and insurers. Health Minister Mark Butler had previously ordered private health insurers to go back to the drawing board and come up with a more reasonable premium increase on 3 occasions. Mr Butler says the increase is justified and proportionate, but the opposition says it is the highest premium increase in 7 years.
The New South Wales Government will invest $3.5 billion in 3 energy storage solutions large enough to power more than 500,000 homes a day. Large-scale batteries planned for Narrabri in the state's northwest slopes and Yagali in the Riverina are expected to be ready by 2027. A pumped hydro project is planned near Lake Barrendong in the central west and is scheduled to be running by 2031.
Police in Queensland have started a homicide investigation after a woman was fatally shot in North Toowoomba. Emergency services were called to Christmas Street, where they found a 27-year-old woman with multiple serious injuries. She was taken to Toowoomba Hospital, where she died. Police say a number of people are now assisting them with their inquiries.
A new report by real estate firm Domain shows more young households are experiencing mortgage stress. Now, they've put out its first home buyer report, and in the latest report, Domain says 5 years ago, Sydney and Melbourne were the only cities where couples aged 25 to 34 who owned a house experienced mortgage stress. Well, it now affects all capital cities except for Darwin. The same cohort who owns units are experiencing mortgage stress in Sydney, Brisbane and Adelaide.
Michelle Trachtenberg, who starred in Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl, has died at the age of 39. The NYPD responded to an emergency call at a luxury residential tower in Midtown Manhattan, where officers found a 39-year-old woman unconscious and unresponsive. Paramedics pronounced her dead at the scene. No foul play is suspected, and the New York medical examiner is investigating the cause of death. Trachtenberg rose to fame at just 10, starring in the 1996 film Harriet the Spy.
Just a real sadness, and it just reminds you of these incredible performers that we see come and go. But hopefully her legacy on screen will be remembered.
Drake has cancelled the 4 remaining shows of his Australia and New Zealand tour due to what he says is a scheduling conflict. Representatives say they're working to reschedule the dates for Brisbane, Sydney and Auckland, but refunds are available for ticket holders. It comes as the Canadian rapper returns to the top of the US charts, unseating his rap rival Kendrick Lamar.
And this final story is not really news, but it is cute because Hamish, a baby Scottish highland calf, is capturing hearts across, well, the world maybe, but at least the United States, as he enjoys his first snowfall. The Nashville Zoo welcomed the calf, saying that locals have been braving the -6-degree weather to get a glimpse of their newest fluffy addition. There you go.
If only it stayed that small and cute.